Lost in Random was both a critical and commercial success from the team over at Thunderbolt Games all the way back in 2021, and the narrative adventure game was really one that I did personally love upon its drop into Xbox Game Pass about a year after its release. However, rather than moving on to a straightforward sequel, several of the key members from the original development team decided to work on some different projects, namely being this year's Midnight Walk. This one though really is staying true to that world of random and even does bring back some familiar faces, but instead of an action adventure game, we're now getting a top-down isometric view roguelike with some pretty cool mechanics. So does Lost in Random The Eternal Die land a perfect 10, or does it falter and give us snake eyes? Well, my name is Fletcher, this is Xbox Nation, let's dive in and find out.
The queen, the souls under their feet. Kiss 'em before you toss 'em.
I'm guessing a lot of you will already take one look at Lost in Random The Eternal Die and will immediately draw some comparisons between this one and Supergiant's Hades. Whilst that comparison is somewhat true, there are a lot of differences here, especially under the hood. There's a pretty lovely and heavy narrative pull to be found in this gem, but is unfortunately mostly lost on anyone who hasn't played the original Lost in Random. There are a ton of returning characters who will speak to you as though you've played the original entry. It's not egregious, and you can pick up the game without playing the original, but you might feel somewhat lost in this unique world. Still, Lost in Random's interactive elements are so strong that the story kind of falls to the wayside anyway. It really begs for you to play this one repeatedly to simply experience more of its moment-to-moment gameplay and the endgame content. One of the standout features of this game, and easily one that will keep you coming back for more, is its combat. It's fast, fluid, and consistently satisfying. Departing from the over-the-shoulder perspective seen in its more narrative-focused predecessor, Lost in Random The Eternal Die now opts for a top-down view that suits its roguelike structure pretty perfectly. If you've played action-packed titles like Hades, Curse of the Dead Gods, or even the most recent Raven's Watch, you'll feel instantly at home here. The camera angle really serves the action well, giving you such a clear view of every chaotic encounter. This time though, you will take on the role of Queen Alexandra, the former villain of the original game, but she's now fully playable and wielding an impressive mix of different weapon types, including the likes of swords, bows, spears, and even a heavy hammer. What makes each run exciting is how much your choice of weapon really impacts the way that combat unfolds. Each of the 4 weapon types really does bring its own unique mechanics and combo possibilities, shaping your entire approach to every single battle. Some gear will lend itself better to certain builds, and the feel of each weapon is very distinct enough to really warrant your experimentation. Enemies are quite tough here, but rather fair. They do have visible health bars so you can gauge your effectiveness, and they don't just stand around either. They will react, reposition, and even team up on you in ways that keep every fight really intense. Alexandra may be all-powerful, but her foes really aren't pushovers. Battles often start with weaker minions that will go down quickly, only to be followed by tougher, elite enemies aligned with the game's primary villain, known as the Mayor the Knight. As you journey deeper into this world, these encounters only grow more intense and rather complex. Combat, however, isn't just about raw firepower. Alexandra's arsenal at your disposal is actually a 3-part system: your main weapon, a powerful card ability, and a trusty dice companion, known as Fortune. Fortune really acts like a tactical grenade. You'll toss him higher for area effects, roll for temporary buffs, and then retrieve him to use it again. Meanwhile, there are cards. They add a more strategic layer to the game, providing you with special powers once you build up enough energy through basic attacks. You will then start each run with 1 card, and you can discover more as you go along, even swapping them out mid-run if you find something better. Mastering though this triad of weapon, card and dice really is essential, and once it clicks, you'll be slicing through rooms with style and efficiency. It's a brilliant loop that really keeps that adrenaline high and just showcases how well this game nails that roguelike combat formula. Now, the main aspect that really does give us a sense of a good action roguelike is the satisfying intersection between its combat sandbox and its progression loop. Surprisingly, this is actually something that Lost in Random The Eternal Die understands perfectly, and it really executes it to a T. In terms of its moment-to-moment progression and its more permanent meta progression, Lost in Random The Eternal Die matches its fun combat sandbox with consistently rewarding progress. It really makes you feel more and more capable as you return to the depths of the Black Die, and every restart never feels like you were ever hard done by. There is everything here, from defeating enemies, clearing certain room-specific challenges, and also rescuing allies who reside back with you in the Sanctuary hub worlds. These alloys that you find will then reward you personally with in-game currency, which I'll get to on a second, and then will also provide you with some extra progression towards the overarching story. In terms of rewards, there are two different types of in-game currency. You have Pip Dust and Cinder. Cinder can be exchanged at the Forge in Sanctuary for different upgrades to each of Alexandra's 4 weapons, with each of them having 4 separate ability chains that amount to different builds. This in turn will synergize with the relics that you will pick up throughout each run. Similarly, Pip Dust is then exchanged back at home base for blessings, and these are actually more permanent upgrades to Alexandra's health, things like damage, attack speed, and so much more. Even though the upgrades at the in-game shops may seem quite expensive at first glance, Lost in Random the Eternal Die is never stingy with its rewards. I can say for a certainty that you'll require plenty of this currency before you know it. Of course, these meta progression elements are really backed up by an incredibly satisfying mix of moment-to-moment progression in every single run. Across the 4 biomes that Alexandra will visit within the Black Die, killing enemies rewards both coins, health potions, or some awesome relic chests, with the former being used as a special merchant found in each biome. The relics that you obtain from chests are a main reward here, and they will grant you with incredibly powerful buffs that comprise the bulk of a different build. Relics are the true highlight of Lost in Random the Eternal Die's progression curve, especially once you factor in you'll be able to hold up to 13 of them and use their color coding to earn bonuses for Alexandra's stats. The weapons and the cards that you take into every single run will determine which relics are more desirable than others, and even after about 15 hours of gameplay so far, new synergies and exciting combinations were revealed, and I still have even more to go to mop up that 100% and the 1000 gamer score. These relics can do things such as cause burn damage, provide extra weapon damage, and so much more, and when you get 3 of the same color relic in a row, you'll get an extra bonus to that corresponding color's ability. For example, if you put 3 red relics in a row, you'll get an additional 50% to your weapon damage. This really allows for some more progression, a real sense of tactics as you try to juggle the relics to know which ones you'll keep or replace, or just making sure you position them to get some incredible bonuses. It's a real treat, and I love this extra aspect that the devs added. The world of Lost in Random the Eternal Die really is a lovely highlight, and it's bloody gorgeous. The art style we love from the original Lost in Random is expertly crafted, even with the change of camera angles, and it still aspires to that Tim Burton-esque style. You do get a total of 4 different biomes, as I mentioned before, from the snow-swept mechanical arenas to a more decrepit swamp stylization, and also the enemies that do inhabit each of these arenas are so well crafted in terms of their appearances and how they also function in different battles. A cool feature I feel that other reviewers might actually miss out on is the extra steps to the world building that are included as you enter and discover brand new areas. If, for instance, there is a game show host who will pop up every now and again with different games that you can actually take part in. You are usually rewarded with an extra relic, maybe some extra health, or sometimes even nothing. It's nice to see these little elements added, as it really gives you that sense of overarching luck and chance, and that really is the game's underlying story. You will also come across some nice story beats that are sort of memories of the past game, and these are nice additions, but only if you did play the original Lost in Random. Without knowing what the original story entailed, these sections seem pretty pointless. Alongside the strong gameplay in Lost in Random the Eternal Die, there is a heavy focus on the narrative that delves more into the interesting world of Random, its inhabitants, and the tumultuous history with Queen Alexandra as a formerly despotic ruler on a quest for redemption. While it's a good story that is further fleshed out by rescuing the inhabitants of Sanctuary and also getting to know them, it ultimately amounts to window dressing rather than an incentive to propel you throughout the game's tougher moments. To be honest, the gameplay is strong enough that it really doesn't need any help in this area, but it's still just pretty much a big letdown. If we use the likes of Hades as a touch point again, the game's story largely works as well as it does thanks to its strength of its characters. These are characters who are, by and large, known figures throughout all of Western civilization, thanks to their almost countless depictions in classical literature and beyond. You will go into Hades knowing that it's a game using Greek mythology as a springboard, and it continually subverts expectations and then surprises you at every turn to make its narrative elements just as compelling as its gameplay. For anyone who hasn't played the original Lost in Random, the Eternal Die just can't hope to replicate that same effect. That's not to say that Lost in Random the Eternal Die story is bad or even inconsequential, but it just isn't. But it also isn't a real reason that you'll find yourself waiting to return to the Eternal Die or push through those tougher bosses. The real draw of Lost in Random the Eternal Die is its gameplay, and to the game's credit, it's strong enough on its own to generate that sort of one more run approach that you get with the best action roguelikes. So I of course had to check out the performance mode across both the Xbox Series consoles to give you a real sense of what you can expect out the gate for this game. I've tried to do some pixel peeping along with the frame rate testing on my end to see what we're getting out of the gate, and to be honest, it's pretty phenomenal for a day one launch. The Xbox Series X does run at a solid 4K with a rock solid 60 FPS. I never encountered any dips during my playthrough, and it was an extremely polished experience even without that day one patch. Onto the Series S, and this one is running at 60 FPS as well, and that's a pretty solid target for a less powerful system. I didn't get a chance to actually test the resolution of this one, but to me it looks the sort of aspect between that sort of 1080 to 1440p. I did have an odd frame dip during some pretty insane encounters with lots of enemies, but it was never anything too egregious on the Series S. I think if you decided to play Lost in Random: The Eternal Die across either of these systems, you will be incredibly happy. There is no option to change between a sort of quality or performance mode either, and I really didn't expect a smaller indie experience like this to have that option available. I will say as well, I didn't really encounter any bugs either. I did have one instance in my 15-hour playthrough where my game decided just to stop. Alexandra suddenly couldn't shoot, I then couldn't move, and the music and the sounds suddenly stopped. I thought I lost everything after a 15-minute run, but I was actually quite pleasantly surprised to see that the save system here is very generous for a roguelike title. I did quit the game fully, rebooted it on the Xbox Series X, and I was in the exact same place with all the issues rectified. I do love that it's more generous at times, as some of the roguelikes will be punishing, especially if your game crashes. So, now I can draw you my conclusion and ultimately let you know if Lost in Random: The Eternal Die is worth your time and money. Well, you're getting an extremely competent roguelike right out the gate. The combat here is rock solid and is up there with other heavy hitters such as Hades, and the overall progression inside and outside of combat is incredibly engaging. It does hit all the right notes in terms of the combat, progression and performance, but it really stumbles in the storytelling department. The narrative is rather weak, and you may feel lost if you haven't played the first games, and you can tell that's not the main draw though. This means the game's length does suffer, as you can complete the entire experience in about 10 hours if you're a roguelike veteran. With all of that considered, I will be giving Lost in Random: The Eternal Die a solid 8 out of 10. I recommend it if you have Game Pass, but the $25 asking price might be a little bit high considering the game's overall length. Still, if you want a great roguelike in terms of combat and progression, then this one is a pickup right away. What do you think of Lost in Random: The Eternal Die, and will you be diving into this one? Let me know down below. Of course, as always, do remember to like this video if you enjoyed this review, and subscribe for more Xbox news, reviews and updates every single day. Whilst you're here though, why don't you check out my review of Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. This is a dark fantasy Skyrim-like RPG, and I reckon you might love it.